Hello folks and welcome to our game on this Thursday. Myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Michael Verney, brought to you here by OurStore.ie, which is the official home of merchandise for our game. Michael, how's she cutting?
All good, Shane. Yeah, all good. Not in the car today, thankfully.
Yeah, jeez. What got sorted, or did you head back down home to Burr?
No, I'm still up here. I'm still up in Meath here, but I just had to jig things around a bit. I'd say I'll be. Yeah, listen, it's not perfect, but we'll work it for the moment.
And what about your GAA career? This weekend now, you're going to be out hurling again.
Yeah, we're playing Lusma last round of Senior B. We're already through, and Lusma need to win to make sure that they avoid a relegation playoff. So plenty to play for. But the way it worked out in the group with us was we played Shamrocks the first day and we beat them, and we somehow beat Clara in the third game, and that meant we were in a semi-final with 2 games to spare, despite the fact that we're probably going to be third or fourth in the group. Kilcormac, Killaty's second team, and Clody Gales look the 2 best teams in it at the moment, so we're going to be meeting one of them in a semi-final. But yeah, training has been fairly limited, needless to say. We're moving house with the child and that, so I'm doing well being there at all.
Well, I thought the whole thing is you have a child and then you're at training more than ever, so you have the escape and you can say to the woman, look, I have to go train, and look, the lads need me.
That ain't my case anyway, I can tell you that, because if I go training, that means I'm gone for about 7 or 8 hours all told between travelling up and down.
Right, okay. And I just wondered about Lusma then as well. They were county champions in 1989. They've had some big names over the years, the likes of Joachim Kelly, the Troys, and are they still producing quality hurlers?
Yeah, they still have a couple involved with the seniors. Evan Kelly, I think, was involved this year. He came on in the McDonough final and was very good. They'd be like, Lusma is like a tiny village, tiny village. That was their one and only county title at the end of the 80s. Actually, it's getting probably more and more difficult. If a place like that loses a couple, they're really struggling. Do you know what I mean? Rural areas like that. But like, I think they put out 2 hurling teams and they put out a junior B football team as well. So, I would have thought a lot of them lads in Bannet are actually the salt of the earth. You wouldn't meet nicer. You don't say it about many, but they were a pleasure to teach. They were just mad into it and real well disciplined as well. So you couldn't go wrong.
36 and counting has come out swinging straight away. Enjoyed the Tip Junior B Championship on TG Cahir on Sunday. Nice of them to show it. So obviously throwing barbs at Borrisoleigh straight away, because obviously Burris weren't particularly good in that game. Thurles, I thought, were pretty good. So that probably is very pointed towards Borrisoleigh.
The only thing I'd say to 36 and counting is the 36, it's been counting for a long time.
Yes.
Fair at this stage. And I'm surprised you didn't come back at him with that one.
Well, 4 finals in a row. I think I've mentioned the 4 in a row many, many times in the last year or so. River Power says, nice brickwork, kid. Did you do that behind you yourself?
Yeah, mad or what? I did not. No, this is actually, I'm in a sunroom here. The kitchen is behind us. So there's a little kind of a gap in between the two here. It's a grand spot now here. Actually, just beside Tato Park, about 2 minutes away from Tato Park. Up around
the climbing wall in there.
Well, I'm only getting settled in, Shane. I'll be there at some stage. I tell you something, the Cuchulainn is an experience, though. I love a good roller coaster. It's amazing, right? Any roller coaster would not affect me whatsoever. But I got on the teacups one night and I got vertigo. Like, go figure. Like, it's because it's around and round like that. Whereas the roller coaster is up and down and whatever. The teacups done me in for about a week and a half one time. The teacups, like.
Of all things, Richard Hogan says, were you not at Ballydoyle on Monday, Mick?
No, I wasn't. No, where I'm off there at the minute. There's a Champions Weekend is obviously coming up. No, I wasn't down there. I've been down there a few times though. It's an equine palace. Oh my God. Like, the horses are unbelievably well looked after. And funnily enough, Shannon, you'd like it as well. You'd learn a lot from a management point of view or a coaching point of view of even, I know they're animals, but how they're looked after. And you know the way...
Well, the lads I coach are animals as well. They'll be the first to say
it. They'll love that. But like, you know, like the way like you have players and teams doing like aqua jogging now or recovery methods. Horses, like they were doing that with horses 40, 50 years ago. Nearly every yard has an equine pool and this kind of crack. And a lot of the methodologies that they'd use in racing would be gone back and they'd use it with various teams and stuff like that. So you'd always pick up something from it.
Yeah, Matty Kenny would always be trying to force us all to get into the sea anytime we had training or a match or anyone was anyway sore. The only cure seemed to be the sea. But to be fair, it does make a difference.
No, he's right. And I asked Gordon Kelly that used to play with Clare, I said, what was the secret to your longevity? And he just said, like, not even messing, like the Atlantic Ocean, like getting in there a couple of times a week. particularly in the winter time. It's like you want to go and do a training session. It's not maybe the most appetizing thing, but you always feel better after. The sea is the exact same. You'll regret it while you're doing it, but when you're finished, you'll never regret it.
I don't mind it too much if I can just jump straight in. If I have to walk and tiptoe my way through it, that's frustrating. It's annoying. I don't want to do it. Like there's what's it called, White Rock Beach down in Kilkenny, and you have to walk more or less on stones the whole way out as well. So it's not even, you can't even take a good old run at it. You're under pressure from the get-go. I see 36 and counting. He's coming back for more. Let's talk about Tip and 2 in a row. By the way, if you want to talk about the last time Tip did 2 in a row, which was in the 60s, that was in a run where Tip did 4 in 5 years. So lest we forget. He says, think Ballygunner for the All-Ireland. Shamrocks vulnerable in Kilkenny this season. Well, so far from 3 games, we'll talk more about Kilkenny later on. They've won 1 game, drawn 1 game, and lost 1 game. But sure, look, isn't it like almost time-honoured at this stage that Ballyhale will come with a run? It's almost impossible to get knocked out of the championship anyway. And by the time they have everyone back and it gets to the serious stuff, they'll cruise away.
Yeah, but sure, like you could be in a preliminary quarter-final where if you win, you're in a quarter-final. If you lose, you're in relegation. I think they were in Henry's first year. They could have been anyway.
I think that it's like, when it's like a relegation playoff / qualifier.
Yeah, that. And like it's just like I think the Village have gotten to a couple of county finals from that position as well. Whereas if you win 1 game, you're on a run. If you lose a game, you're in a horrible, horrible position. But they realistically, I think Colin Fennelly might be away at the minute. There are a good few players abroad during the summer as well. They'll just be focusing on having everyone back when they really, really need them. That's around, now or in the next couple of weeks. Get 3 or 4 weeks under their belt. And just get them humming for when they need to be humming, basically. You would suspect that they could be a bit susceptible, though, this year of all years, with Joey Holden away, and as I said, with a couple of other lads, doubts about whether they're around or not.
Did you hear any talk of Henry Shefflin and Michael Fennelly Jr. for them this year?
Yeah, that's brilliant. If they are, as somebody tagged us on Twitter, I think it was 18 All-Irelands between the two of them playing junior, and we were only talking the other day about our lads still doing it for the club. We don't like Michael Fennelly mightn't even be 40 yet, or he might be in around that. Yeah. But obviously his some of the injuries he's had probably have taken years off him. But imagine if you're a young lad, 17, 18. What a pleasure it would be to be togging out alongside them boys. And I wonder is Henry still refereeing Kilkenny Junior Championship games?
A bit like Owen Kelly and Tip.
Yeah.
But can you imagine, there you are going out for a nice junior game in Kilkenny and Henry Shefflin comes walking over to you. I mean, that's got to be, so...
Well, listen, it's the same. Is it Junior E that Eddie Brennan is playing for Greg Ballycallan? It's the exact same. But, to be fair... It's something you definitely recount in years to come about, one of the greatest players, or even in Eddie's case, 8-time All-Ireland winner. I marked him in a junior. You know what I mean? And that's the amazing thing. You see Messi playing over with Inter Miami at the moment, and it's deadly for a load of those lads to say that they've shared a pitch with him, let alone his teammates or the opposition. That's class. But in the GA, it's commonplace that. A lad, not Benchmark, a lad that could be absolutely stone useless playing junior. And more luck to him. And I love anyone that's playing, fair play to them. But to say that they shared a pitch with Henry Shefflin or Fennelly or something like that, that's class. And you don't see that many sports or walks of life really where that's actually a possibility.
Did you see, have you noticed the amount of Inter Miami jerseys with Messi 10 on the back of it around? You see kids wearing them everywhere. It just shows the power of the player now. There'll always be the power of the club, but I bet you'll start to see Al Nassr jerseys with Ronaldo around Christmas and more. I think the Saudi League is going to become quite big. I don't think this is just a short-term thing, and they'll be in the Champions League in a few years' time. I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case.
No, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. It's going to be a gradual process, isn't it? Look, when Liv started out at the golf, there was a good bit of a hoopla around it originally, but I didn't see much of the golf, and I don't watch that much golf. But by the end of it, I'm starting to see lots of different clips going around and lots of bits and pieces now. It's on my timeline or in it comes across my radar a lot more now. The Saudi soccer is going to be the exact same, and I'm obviously not much of a fan of it, but it's definitely something that's here to stay, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and funny you should mention golf there. I got new clubs a couple of weeks ago. But just before that happened, I got an unmerciful slap on the hand playing junior there with Kula. And luckily I was wearing the glove, because I'd say you'd be talking about all amounts of... No, I didn't protect my hands, so I'm not blaming anyone else. I haven't been able to even try out the new clubs.
Go away. Yeah, not simple. Yeah, I got a slap in my thumb at the start of the year. They're still giving me jip. Again, probably didn't properly protect myself, and you kind of get what you deserve in that instance. I played a bit of golf last week, actually. A scramble format for a lad that's useless is it's perfect, because you can play one good shot every couple of holes and you're a hero.
So are you talking about the one where every shot on a hole, you're always picking the best one or the best drive?
Yeah, no, every shot on a hole, and you take three drives from everybody throughout the course of the round.
Yeah, I think that's a good rule to it. But I hate having to, like, let's say your second shot is okay. I don't think you can actually get a run of form. I don't think you can get up and running if you don't start well. I actually don't mind too much picking the best drive, but picking the best every shot, I really do mind, because I did that earlier this year and it sickened me.
Yeah, well, I tell you, the thing that really sickens me is how that 4 lads can be within 8 feet for a putt and they can all miss it. That's just criminal, like, and you get the line the first time.
Up.
Yeah, true enough. I didn't have my third drive taken until the 18th. So I had to stand up, and like, your score is goose. Like, if I drive into the trees, then I'm dropping and we're hitting 3 or whatever, and bang down the middle. It was probably the first one I hit down the middle all day, and you leave feeling great. It's like that video going around where there's that, you're duffing a shot and you're like, I hate golf. You hit a shot in the 18th and you go in and pay for membership straight away for the year.
Do you know, actually, you mentioned there lads playing against older players, and it's great to say they share the field with them or whatever. And I was thinking about, I think it must have been 15 years ago, maybe even slightly more. I played a soccer match, and Declan Carr was playing for probably somewhere around the Holy Cross neck of the woods. I can't even remember some of the names of the soccer team, but I just remember it kind of stood out to me at the time. Sure, he's probably similar age then to what I am now, maybe slightly older or whatever. But yeah, it was kind of gas. It kind of struck me at the time. And another day, actually playing against... now, he wouldn't be too much older than me. Redzer O'Grady, playing soccer for one of the teams in Perlis. And actually, I remember at one stage, the ball was coming to me, and you know the way you try and hold the player off? I put the hand back, and one of the fingers went straight up his nostril.
Lovely. You got more than your bargain for there.
I certainly did. Yeah, I didn't know what to do with my finger then. Keith Rossiter has been announced as the boss of Wexford, of course. And then there's plenty of talk about who's in his backroom team, if you want to read it out for us there.
Yeah, I'll fly through it. David Franks, obviously, who's former Offaly hurler. He was cornerback back in the day when I was there as well. He's been with Ballygunner for the last good while, and he was actually as coach and is very well regarded by all accounts. And he was with Keith with the Wexford 20s this year, so he's going to be involved there. Talk of Frank Flannery been involved. I'm not sure. Frank Flannery, who's obviously with out at the Balla when Keith was a player and they won that Leinster title.
Thanks for bringing that up.
They beat their good selves in the final, actually. There's talk of him being involved, but I'm not sure to what level he's going to be involved. Maybe not to the level that's been kind of reported. Damien Fitzhenry's involved as goalkeeping coach, and Éanna Martin, who was again involved with the 20s with Keith Rossiter this year.
He's a commercial manager with Wexford.
Oh, he definitely was, anyway, when they took in big money, when they started streaming. They were one of the first counties to stream. They're actually in a really good position financially. I think they are, anyway. They were in the last couple of years, even though they got the floodlights up in Wexford Park, which probably cost a fair whack. But yeah, plenty of big names there. Plenty of big names. It's still going to be a lot going into the unknown for Rossiter, though. Like, there is, I'm sure, if you're to add percentages to the difference between an under 20 job and a senior job, you're talking about a different kettle of fish completely. With the 20s, you're talking about lads that are in school and college, and they might be in relationships or whatever. But when you're talking about senior players, you're talking about lads looking for work, lads potentially going off traveling for a year. You're talking about marriages, you're talking about kids, you're talking about breakups. There's so that this is only just like talking about the people that you're involved with. It's a different kettle of fish completely.
So if I was to look at some of those under 20s that Wexford had last year, that of course Keith had, there's some good players there. Keane Byrne, he was the wing forward, I think, really dynamic.
Good player, yeah.
Killian Byrne as well. Corey Byrne Dunbar. Now, I don't know if too many of them are oven ready to come straight in for senior next year. And like you talked before, remember we talked about last year, do they have enough players coming in the next couple of years? Well, we definitely saw a bit at under 20 level, and it's not like they went out and hammered the Offaly team that everyone fell in love with last year. There was only 2 points between them. So if we're looking at that Offaly team to come in the next couple of years, surely there's no reason to suggest that Wexford don't have a few as well.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think it's those players that you're looking to for the next generation, though. I think it's the 24s, 25s, and 26s, maybe. Like when Chin steps away, when Matt O'Hanlon steps away, when Conor Mack, obviously, who's only 28, but he's been on the scene a long time. When the likes of those guys step away, Liam Og, Dio O'Keefe as well. I think the worry would be in 2 or 3 years. And yes, those lads that are 19 and 20 that you mentioned there, but like, when are they really going to start hitting their peak? Probably when they're 24, 25, 26, maybe even later. It's that middle group that I'd be a bit worried about. That I'd be a bit worried about where Wexford will be in, we'll say, 2026, 2027. That would be the kind of a worry.
Yeah, I have to bring up this video of the Boris Lee fundraiser. So I'm just going to put it on screen here and play it for everybody.
Boris at the minute.
And just see what you make of it.
Is able to poke the ball 100 yards down the field. And what do we decide to do? When he poked the ball out to the back man, a short puck out, and it ends up out over the line or above in the stand or somewhere.
God, don't I know? God, it's fair hard to look at, isn't it?
It's fair hard to look at. It's fair, even harder to listen to.
That's the full-back drifter.
My God. She is a beauty.
That's it.
My God. She is some stuff.
An absolute crap.
Oh, Lord, I tell you one thing. I've seen a fair few rear-ends in me time, but that's as good as I've ever seen.
It's a hard Brazilian job.
That is a grade A, 100% Belgian blue.
The music is brilliant. So win a Belgian blue Rowan heifer for $3,000.
Well, I sent it on to my father anyway, and he thought it was brilliant advertising. He'd obviously be a big farmer. Richard Hogan asked, "What's the story with the bullock, with the fundraiser?" River Power said, "Pretty sure it's a heifer. The video is very different if it's a bullock."
Did you ever see that movie Kingpin? And
God,
they said,
yeah.
What did he say as well? We milked the heifer or whatever, and he said, "We don't have one. We have
yeah. So he meant something. He meant something else.
That's the wrong thing. Richard Hogan says Franks was an interesting addition to the under-21 backroom team. Surprised Watford didn't pick him up.
Yeah, well, like, considering he's working within Ballygunner, he's living down in Carrickshock, which would be close enough to the border, I think. But yeah, very well regarded. And not that long out of the game as well. So it was only a matter of time before he was going to appear on the inter-county scene. And it's against Wexford, it's funny, like, him and Rosser would be cuffing the same cloth now, because they would have taken a fair few scalps back in the day when there were players playing in the full back line where it was dog eat dog.
You had a question to ask. Is it ever acceptable for supporters to leave a game early? Because we've seen this a bit in the Premier League recently. We always see it in professional sports, but it does happen in amateur sports as well.
Oh, it definitely does. There seems to be big talk about it, particularly with regards to the Premier League and fans leaving at half time or fans leaving after an hour or whatever. I would just never do it, because to me, you always miss something. The only time I had to do it was, it's mad the time I had to do it. We were selling raffle tickets for a monster draw in Burgea, and we were selling them outside O'Connor Park.
Was it a monster heifer?
No, it was I think it was a Caribbean cruise, something like that. The heifer was a good one. I'm just wondering how long they had to video to get the heifer to look like that, look straight down the lens of the camera. But it was Kilkenny Galway in O'Connor Park. When it finished, was it 5:15 to 3:21? And Galway were down by 10 points, and we had to go after the hour because Borough were training. Might have been around the time of a county semi-final or something like that, so we had to get back for that. And we were going back to the car, and there were Galway supporters going back to their cars. And then when they heard a goal was gone in, they started going back towards the stadium. And as they were walking back towards the stadium, there was another goal. And all of a sudden, that was the game where Henry put over the winner, and then Canning put over the leveler. Like, of all the games to be leaving early, yeah. I just would never do it, because you always miss something. And I'd say if you looked at in GA, when are the most amount of sending offs? Like, there's so many double yellows at the end of games. Like, you can't, a stroke that a fella might do in frustration at the end, you'll always miss something. That's one reason I'd never do it. And the second is, I just think, once you're there, you're there. You're there to the bitter end. I remember in 2000, there was a lot of good few Offaly supporters leaving. I was on the hill for that All-Ireland final, and it was over early enough. But I just think you stay there until the bitter end, and you take your lemons, you take your medicine. Whatever you win, you'll stay there, and you'll stay there whatever and shouting around, and you'll be maybe jawing at lads, and you'll be delighted. If on the flip side of it, if you lose, you stay there, you take your medicine as well. What do you think? Like, it does happen. I personally just would never do it because I feel you always miss something, and I think it's wrong to leave early.
What if the stadium is a bottleneck like McDonagh Park and Nina, and you're trying to beat the traffic to get out? I mean, cut us some slack there.
The best bet there is
Cork.
Down
in Cork trying to get out at.
The best bet there is to do the extreme of that, is just realize, okay, I'm gonna be stuck in traffic for the next 2 hours. Let's go to the pub and get a bit of grub or watch a match or something like that. That's the other extreme. There is nothing worse than sitting in something for an hour or something like that after a game, or in Cork's case, it could be 3 or 4 hours. So you're probably better off. I still don't know. I still don't know if it's acceptable, to be honest with you. Or if you are leaving, I'd still even watch the game at the corner. You'd be down out of your seats and you watch the game. Second the final whistle goes, you're gone.
So I'm trying to think the match where I did that, and I'm just double checking now. Yeah, I think it was the 2005 Munster hurling final. Tipperary were getting beaten pretty well by Cork that day, and I left with maybe 5 minutes or whatever it was to go, and then heard a massive roar. So, along with some other Tipperary supporters, headed back. I think Tip were down by something like 9 or 10 at half time. It's the day that Paul Kelly scored 7 points. Went rushing back in. Tommy Dunn had scored a goal, and then it more or less petered out and you had to head off again. So I thought it was relatively justified at the time because of the traffic in Cork. So
well, it's gas though, because I remember my uncle always saying that he met someone after the 82 All-Ireland, the 82 football All-Ireland, a Kerry man, and he must have had Offaly colours on. My uncle must have had, and your man was kind of jeering him or whatever. And he said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Did you not stay till the end?" He said, no, I left when we were 2 up. Like, he left when they were 2 up and the 5 in a row was in the bag. Like, imagine getting that one wrong and been out in Dublin thinking that you're on cloud 9, and you're basically after missing one of the greatest moments in GAA history, albeit for Kerry people, probably one of the worst moments in GAA history. But imagine thinking, the 5 in a row is in the bag, I'll go out and get the ham sandwiches or go and get a pint, and you get a seriously rude awakening a few minutes later.
Yeah, a friend of mine loves going on about when Tip beaten Kilkenny in, was it 2016 or 2019? Sure, they were both basically the same. Anyway, he said, towards the end, he could see 1 or 2 Kilkenny supporters getting up to leave, and he let them roar back towards the stewards, lock them in and make them watch.
Isn't that what they said? Wasn't that the same wasn't that said at half time when Tipperary went down the tunnel in Nolan Park for that league game where they were getting absolutely annihilated under Sheedy, and was that 10 or 9? 9, I think. And they rattled them in the league final. I think it was 9. And like Cummins always says that when they were going down, there was like, lock them in and make them watch it. Like, they were getting absolutely annihilated. But I just think you nail your colours to the mast. You have to suffer it out. Like, I don't know, the great days are made all the better by witnessing the bad days. And I do say one of our viewers has in there like that a lot of people leave in anger or whatever. They do, but you probably end up even angrier when there's boys hurling abuse at you from other counties, and there's nothing worse than fair weather supporter or something like that, or you'll only stay when they're winning or something like that. So I just say suffer it out. Right,
so we're going to do an end of year report card for the Munster teams. We're going to do the Leinster teams later. But let's start off with Munster. And this isn't just the Munster Hurling Championship. We want to talk about how they did beyond that, if they did progress. Obviously, not all the teams did. But we'll do it alphabetically. We'll start off with Clare. How did we rate them? We're going to do it like it's a school report. So A+, A minus. Are we going to go with A and A+, or are we going to throw in an A minus as well?
I'd say A+, A minus. Yeah, I'd say the three variants. It's like when you're doing ratings. I like having a 0.5 in the ratings because someone could be like very harshly given a 7, but not have done enough to get an 8. Do you know what I mean? So the 0.5 is a nice get on.
10.
At no stage ever.
I mean, as a looker.
Definitely at no stage ever.
Okay, we'll start off with Clare then. Finished top of the round robin group stages. Munster final only beaten by, you could say, a point, or you could say a refereeing decision, whatever way you want to look at it. Could have gone to extra time 2 years in a row. Blew up, of course, in an All-Ireland semi-final. Not quite to the same level as the year before, but, you know, didn't really perform the way that they'd want to perform in an All-Ireland semi-final. What would you be looking at here? Like, given the talent they have and the fact that this should be their prime years now, can you actually score them that highly?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they blew up in an All-Ireland semi-final. They were down at 5 at half-time, but they were in a good position. Was it 1917? They had themselves in a winning position in that game until they got caught in possession and the goal kind of turned the game. Were it not for Owen Murphy's save from Peter Duggan, maybe we would have been going to extra time. Maybe Clare would have won in normal time. But their Munster round robin was outstanding. Their Munster final was very good, and they will feel harshly done by there. But like at the end of the day, they finished the year without silverware again. And there were a couple of things that happened throughout the year. We'll say, you know, who picked up Galan in the Munster final? Bit of a mystifying decision there. Playing the sweeper in the All-Ireland semi-final. Bit of a mystifying kind of decision there. They obviously were brilliant against Dublin in that All-Ireland quarter-final. But like...
Well, Dublin were brutal. I mean, they didn't set up with a sweeper and needed to, and basically just followed the men out the field, Clare were able to run through them. But if you want to finish out your point, but I do want to say that, like, with the quality of players and the fact that so many of them are like in their prime now, like John Conlon, I know he took that big blow against Dublin, Tony Kelly, Shane O'Donnell. There's definitely a few more as well you could put in that bracket. And I know they were unlucky with Conor Cleary or whatever. He came back and he gave a good performance. But given the level of talent they have now, they didn't really do much more than they did last year. And in a way, not even getting the extra time in the Munster final would suggest maybe they did slightly less.
Yeah, listen, as I said, Shane, about the silverware as well, they don't have anything to show. They're the team that looked like they can take Limerick down, and they were the only team to beat Limerick, obviously. Throughout the 2023 championship, Limerick finished with all the trophies, and Clare were the only team to beat them in a really, really, really meaningful game or whatever. So, like, that earns them, you know, a bit of credit or whatever. But as you say there, with players in their prime, it's just disappointing. And getting to an All-Ireland final was the minimum, realistically. Yeah. It was. And like we saw from the All-Ireland final as well, Kilkenny are a good side. They're not a great side. And Clare weren't able to get over them. So for me, it's probably a B, but it's probably a low B because I see it as a missed opportunity. A couple of missed opportunities this year for Clare.
If they won an All-Ireland, it'd be A+, yeah? If they got to a final and lost it, but played well, it'd probably be an A. If they went to the final and fairly poor, you'd probably say B. If they had to win their semi-final, maybe a B+ would be okay, or a normal B. Sorry, a B+ if they got to the final, didn't do great. I think it's B- at the absolute best. But that might even be if they won Munster, given the talent and the fact that they seem to be building towards it. I think a C+ and I'm saying that almost as a compliment to what they have at their disposal. They got decisions wrong. They were unlucky then, I suppose, in semi-final, Ryan Taylor getting injured. But it can't just be bad luck every single day. So it can't be bad luck that they imploded last year in the semi-final. It can't be bad luck that for long spells of the semi-final this year, they didn't play great stuff. I don't know. I think C+ at best.
I'll go with you on a C+, yeah. B- and C+ they're teetering on the same thing. So I've no issue there because I just see there was a couple of missed opportunities. That's all. They had to get to an All-Ireland final this year. They just had to. They had to find a way. And I suppose another criticism is that they just haven't been able to find a way in these big games, like in the semi-finals, in the Munster finals, as close as they've been. Yeah, they just haven't been able to find a way. Still haven't won a championship game in Croke Park since the 2013 replay. Do you know what I mean? I think C+ is fair. And you know, I'll tell you why it's fair. It's fair because of what they have at their disposal. That's why it's fair. And if anything, it's nearly a compliment to them, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So Cork then, I mean, 2022, they got out of Munster and should have beaten Galway in the quarterfinal, but of course they didn't, left it behind them. They had plenty of chances to win that game. This year, I mean, the feeling is that they played a bit better under Pat Ryan, and yet they didn't qualify. But, they were just a hair's breadth from qualifying with the way the results were going in the final day. Like, they're actually very, very hard to score.
Has any team earned more credit without qualifying from Munster than Cork? Because it's like, we don't know how they would have fared in a preliminary quarterfinal, in an All-Ireland quarterfinal or semi-final, but everyone sees it as, it's like the eye-catching horse that finishes with a flourish, and he doesn't run for a while, and everyone thinks, oh yeah, but remember what this lad did here, or whatever. We didn't get to see the next performance. We didn't get to see whether they would kick on or not. But when you look at their results, beaten by Clare by 1 in Ennis, beaten by Limerick by 1. Like, the championship could have been completely different. If they would have been completely different if they gotten a result in either of those games. Drew a tip, beat Waterford pretty comprehensively. We definitely saw signs that the wheel is turning, and a good few of the young faces are kind of coming through. But then you're kind of thinking they're still relying on Patrick Horgan. Maybe they're still relying on Seamus Hannity. I think a B for Cork would be. I think it would be generous.
Yeah,
being honest with you. Because when you're looking at what was their sole aim this year, I would say it was get out of Munster. And you can say they were unlucky here or there, or there was a free bot at the end of the Clare game, maybe that robbed them of a minute, maybe to get 11 score. But they didn't, as much as we think there's lots of potential there or whatever, they didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve at the start of the year. And that's the nuts and bolts of it.
They showed good staying power in their games. Like, remember at one stage against Clare, they were being well beaten and they found a way to come back. So we'll give them a lot of credit for things they did well. And I think Pat Ryan, it looks like they're moving in the right direction, because to push Limerick that close, and so many teams are losing narrowly to Limerick, or Limerick are getting a draw when it looks like they should have been beaten, that sort of thing. But yeah, their only victory was over a fairly bedraggled looking Waterford team in that opening fixture that they had. Obviously, Waterford had played against Limerick the week before and played quite well. But after that, yeah, couldn't beat Tipperary after getting a brilliant start. And I wonder if Jason Ford hadn't gone off, and every team had loads of injuries, don't get me wrong. But I wonder if he hadn't gone off injured early in the game, might Tipperary have steadied down and won that game. But look, Tipperary were unconvincing in a lot of ways as well. Robbie O'Flynn being injured, that was a huge blow to them last year. I don't know. I think C+ would be about right as well.
I wonder is the All-Ireland under-20 success feeding into the potential thing as well, and the fact that people would maybe give them a higher grade or put them in the B category, because all these lads are coming. There is evidence that you can see the wheel is turning. As you said, they show good staying power. I think that's kind of feeding into it as well. I think anything more than a C+ would be generous enough, I'd say. Like, how you have to realistically think about it. How would Pat Ryan rate his season?
Yeah,
I think C+, and like you can say, maybe like Clare people are probably going to go nuts in the sense that you're giving Cork a C+ and you're giving Clare a C+. One finished 4th in Munster, one finished top of Munster. But I think C+ is fair for Cork.
Yeah, Cork's players aren't at their peak just yet. Like, okay, obviously 1 or 2 are at their peak, or some would say gone beyond their peak. But it's a good point here from 36 and counting. But lads, they didn't deserve to win any of those close games. Tip were the better team in Cork. They could have no complaints. They can't win a battle, keep saying it. And okay, do they need to prove to us that there's a bit more metal? I thought at times there was this year. Look at the amount of league games where they were behind, and came back to win. The Wexford game, one in particular, they were well behind. They came back to win that game. So I thought that was quite impressive. Like, I look at their team here, let's say the team that played the last game of the year against Limerick, and go through it. Patrick Collins, he's a solid player. Niall O'Leary's solid. Been there for quite a while, as has Damien Cahalane and Sean O'Donoghue. Half backline, Jerry Millerick's had a few years. Kieran Joyce is really settling down as a big player. Robert Downey's going from strength to strength. I think we've both said that a lot. Brian Roach, he's really developing. Luke Meade is probably in his, maybe 6th season. It's about 2018 or 17 that he came on the scene. Tim O'Mahony, maybe he'll start to really bed in the forward line. Dar Fitzgibbon, he should really be coming to the boil now. Declan Dalton made a bit of a comeback. Shane Kingston, we're always just waiting for that form to really kind of get there as a starter. Patrick Horgan, he has another year in him. Seamus Hannity, the likes of Brian Hayes, Ethan Toomey, Shane Barrett, Conor Lahan, will he be there? Pádraig Power. Yeah, do you know what? I don't know if they could have done much more with what they have looking at that. Like, if Robbie O'Flynn was was fit and firing all year, and there's probably another injury or two I'm not thinking of. I don't know if we could have expected too much more from them this past season.
Yeah, that's why I think probably something like a C plus is probably fair enough, to be honest with you. Clare people are probably going to go mad that they're only a C plus, but I actually think that's a compliment.
Richard's not happy here.
Yeah, Richard Hogan just says, surely round results count more than league performances. Clare need to be a B in that case. Come on, Shane. I love the way it's just directed at you. I think a C plus is fair for Cork, I have to say.
Yeah, okay. So next team then to talk about, Limerick, A plus and leave it at that.
Well, they won the league, they won Munster somehow, and they won the All-Ireland. They won the All-Ireland playing some of their best stuff at the end of the championship. Look at the last 45 against Cork, and look at the last 35, 40 minutes against Kilkenny. They timed it absolutely perfect.
Galway and Kilkenny.
Galway and Kilkenny, sorry, yeah. And
Didn't
they won
have 15-point swings after kind of maybe absorbing the storm early on. They won from some point in the first half to the end by 15 points. It was so comprehensive.
They won an All-Ireland without Declan Hannon, the most successful captain in hurling history, and Sean Finn, until the All-Stars are given out this year, their most decorated player in that term as well. So they're their best man marker and their quarterback at centre back. Like, how scary is that for next year? How scary is that? Don't get me wrong, someone else will go down next year and they'll be missing somebody else. But the fact that they showed that they were able to do it without the two of them, and it was just business as usual. Yes, there were moments in the All-Ireland where maybe Owen Cody's goal chance and a couple of other bits and pieces where the game might have turned, but you kind of just think Limerick would have found a way anyway. So when you win the three big competitions that you take part in,
it's like, and also under the pressure of doing a Munster 5 in a row in like a bear pit of a championship, and doing the 4 in a row, beating two teams. So not only did they see off everyone in Munster, they then saw off the best of Leinster as well. I don't think you can give anything but an A plus, especially how comprehensive it was in those last two games.
Yeah, no, I'd go along with that. At the end of the day, they ticked every box that they wanted to tick this year. So you can't say any less than that. And in the All-Ireland final, were they as good as we've seen them in that second half of the All-Ireland final? Probably.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there was no debate midway through the second half. It was just game over and done, wasn't it? And yeah, fantastic stuff. So you have to give credit to them. Tipperary, so A plus there. We move on to Waterford.
No. Tipperary's season is hard enough it's kind of a tricky one to assess. It was a good league and a good 40-45 minutes against Limerick, and they brought some of that into the championship. A lot of Clare people would say that were it not for some goalkeeping mistakes, Tip would have done well to win a Munster championship game this year. Hard enough to probably argue with that. Probably missed opportunity. Probably should have beaten Cork realistically. Could have beaten Limerick, and then they were brutal against Waterford. Brilliant against
Galway.
Yeah, and very, very bad against Galway. You can throw in that they were brilliant against Offaly, but let's call it a spade. There's a serious gulf in class there. So I don't even know if that game would merit any part of the grade going up or down, realistically. Yeah, it's probably a low C. It's probably a low C for me now. Some people would say, oh, what was the difference between Tipperary this year and Tipperary last year? And to me, that's blind. Like, if you can't see that, I honestly do think it's blind. There were poles apart. Players in completely different shape. There was a different attitude. There was a different style. There was a clear pattern about how Tipperary were playing. Did it work the whole time? No. Did they have the players to play that game plan the whole time? No. Did they have a big strength in depth? Probably not. But that's something that will develop. But to me, comparing Tipperary in 2022 and 2023 are two completely different debates.
Well, I think that's a lot of people just being mischievous and just trying to find a way to bash Tip and say, they're no better than the year before. And look, you hunted Colin Bonner out of town. And look, that was very unfortunate the way that happened. But Tipperary did need to make a change. And I think that was proven, even if the results, like qualifying out of Munster is great, but obviously losing to Waterford in that manner was desperate. Losing to Galway without putting your best foot forward in any way, shape or form. Like, Galway were full value and should have won by more. And I remember saying that on Galway Bay FM straight away after the game, saying I have no arguments here with the way that game went. There was a few decisions I wasn't happy about at the time, but really, like Danny Mack here says, Tip were desperate against Galway. But like, you do have to at the same time say, right, so Barry Heffernan wasn't there, Paddy Cadell wasn't there, Gerard Brown was out injured, there was another player or two as well. So there were players there for Tipperary that probably would have been right in there to play some big games and just weren't available. And that's part of the reason that the strength and depth wasn't there. Now, Richard Hogan says Tip played better this year, but probably didn't get the results the performances deserved. Cork game was the one that got away. Yeah, Tipperary should have beaten Cork that day, but had such a desperate start to the game. So, like, have players kind of developed and come on a little bit this year? Yeah, I'd say for the most part, you could say that. I think Jake Morris has shown he's ready to kick on to the next level, and at times did. I think Brian O'Mara is settling down nicely. Owen Connolly settled down nicely. He produced some good performances throughout the year. I think Conor Bowe gave flashes that he's got something. So I don't think Tipperary are going to be too far away in terms of like being best of the rest next year. We're still going to obviously look at Limerick as being the number one. But I wouldn't get overly carried away with what Tipperary did either, because the manner of kind of petering out. And I'd probably say C-.
Yeah, I throw Connor Stakelum and Mark Yo into that as well. There's signs that they're going to be, very good players at intercounty level. I think C- is kind of fair enough, to be honest with you. Like, imagine to say, like, before the Waterford game that you'd be giving Tip a C-. Tip should have been in the Munster final. Like, do you know what I mean? Tip had 2 feet, a foot and 3 toes in a Munster final, and then they made, they were just brutal against Waterford, like terrible, so bad. And the fact that then they would go and blow Offaly away, and then to be, as Richard said, desperate against Galway, and they still made the game competitive and could have got a result. But yeah, I think C- is fair, to be honest with you. And I think Liam Cattell is his harshest critic, and he would see plenty of good things that they did, but he'd see plenty of room for improvement next year too.
Yeah, and like Rhys Shelley, he's developed himself as a very good goalkeeper. You've obviously got Brian Hogan there as well. Michael Breen was moved back into wing back, so that, like, in year one he did very well there. Alan Tynan really developed himself this year. Gerard O'Connor, and then there's more under 20s that'll probably be coming online in the next year or two. And obviously I'll be finding out very, very much within my own house what's coming from the under 20s, because obviously people would have seen that Paddy's a coach for that next year. But like, I do think that there's talent coming. And I do think that there's 1 or 2 players to come back from injury, and Tipperary can kick on. There'll obviously be 1 or 2 retirements, you'd imagine. But, the young blood has to come through at some stage. So, that's just that's life, really.
Consistency, Shano, is the big one for me. Tip showed flashes of what they could do, and then they showed flashes of also what they can do as well in a negative way, and with a couple of non-performances. But yeah, I think C- is more than fair.
Waterford, right. So 4 games. Did very well the first day out against Limerick. Nobody was expecting them to do as well as they did. Now, go on if you actually go before that and talk about the league, it was all the red cards. It was the weaker side of the league, didn't get through to the semi-finals. Drew with Dublin despite going down to 13 men. And for a nice period of time, they were down to 13 men. And against Tipperary, doing quite well until a red card as well. The other teams in the group maybe not quite as strong as as the other group for sure. So they were good against Waterford Limerick when no one expected it. They were brutal against Cork the next day out, losing by 9. Then they were beaten 222-16 against Clare, really bad that day. And then it was a 6-point hammering against Tipperary. Like, realistically, they were very, very far superior. But the problem that we had was, like, players playing out of position all over the shop. Hard to know exactly what they're doing. Like, Limerick go out every day, exactly what Limerick are going to do, but it's just so hard to stop. Whereas Waterford go out there, you don't know what they're going to do, and you just wonder what's it building towards. So there's part of me that's just really, really frustrated watching them, and then there's another part thinking, well, what if they got Everton moving in the right direction with Patrick Fitzgerald starting inside alongside Desi, and if you got Ozzy mixed in there as well, of course, obviously somewhere along the line. What about Billy Nolan? That was a success, putting him in centre back. Now, it was only 1 game against a very poor Tip offering that day. Like, you still got Patrick Kern. Why didn't we see too much of him this year? Stephen Bennett, so they have a load of talent, but we just didn't see enough from it overall. And I think it'd be very hard to give too much more than a D.
Yeah, for the talent that they have, Shane, you'd have to say that 2023 was a disaster. And if you take the Tip game out of it, and how much stock are you taking in the Tip game? Waterford are out of the championship. Do you know what I mean? But now, on the flip of that, they also played the Tip game without Conor Prunty, without Austin Gleeson, and without Ty DeBorca, who obviously got injured early in the championship. So then you're thinking their best performance was delivered without, 3 of their mainstays. Maybe we should be giving that more stock. But, I just don't think it should have taken that long in the year to realise we need to play Patrick Fitzgerald and Desi Hutchinson inside, and we need to play them really, 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 really close to goal and offer that kind of threat. The league was a write-off. Outside of that Limerick game, it was like 2 limp performances. When their season was on the line against Clare and against Cork, it was 2 really, really poor performances. No point in saying any different. And it was hard to see the rhyme and reason of what they were doing. So, yeah, like I'd be looking at a low D, to be honest with you, a low D.
When you see Darragh Lyons back in his own full back line, marking Tony Kelly, and I know last weekend he was back, well, from what I saw of the game, he seemed to be back marking Desi Hutchinson. So it's not like he's never played there. This is for Dungarvan. But I don't know, surely like Waterford have got more specialist man markers. If he's playing back there, okay, put a man on him back there. If he moves out midfield, if he keeps swapping over and back, you need to find somebody who's comfortable in both positions. Now, maybe that's the most comfortable player they had for it, but I'm not sure that I totally agree. In the past, they put Caleb Lyons on him, and obviously that might sort of decommission him as an attacking weapon. But it didn't decommission Mikey Butler when he was playing for Kilkenny. If you have everything else right around him, are you willing to sacrifice Caleb Lyons and what he brings to your team to shut down Tony Kelly? I think you probably would, wouldn't you?
I think so, yeah.
Now, Lyons had a tough time against him a couple of years beforehand in Thurles, remember, in that first round Munster game during COVID. But I don't know, there was too many things that felt like they didn't quite make sense. So I'd go with a flat D. I don't know.
I'd probably go with a D. I'd probably go with a D minus, being honest with you, because if you were looking at, like, you're looking at a team that was in the 2020 All-Ireland final, a team that was in the 2021 semi-final, a team that won the league in 2022. Like, if you pick out, let's just say, Conor Prunty, Tyg de Borca, Caleb Lyons, Jack Fagan, Desi Hutchinson, Austin Gleeson, Stephen Bennett, like, you're looking at like guys that didn't be taken on any team in the country. You know what I mean? So I just think, yeah, I'd probably go with a D minus, being honest with you. But I'd settle on the D. I'll go halfway with you if you want. But I think we're probably grading harshly enough. So in general, so I'd say we probably should be consistent and go with the D minus.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, because we've been harsh enough on others. That's a fair point. So we'll come back and we'll do Leinster a little bit later on. But we've got some other things to preview this weekend. Well, actually, there's another bit of news as well that Wexford and Carlow, they're opposing the end to the preliminary senior hurling championship quarterfinal. So they're going to impose that central council motion next month. And I don't know if I agree with that at all. I think it's time to get rid of it.
Well, it's going to be voted on at Special Congress. So they're probably in the minority, I would say. And the unfortunate thing is the ones that are in the minority are the ones that are actually playing these games. So
how do you feel about counties that are, let's say, that have no interest in hurling? Really, realistically, there's a load of football teams or counties that don't have that big of an interest in something that could affect Offaly in the next year or so. Yeah,
the majority and the ones that they're going to go with whatever the majority opinion is, and the most of the conversation is that the preliminary quarterfinals need to go because there's a heap of hammerings and because it's kind of buying time, or you're going to buy time back in the calendar, and most of those counties are going to go with that kind of opinion. And it has no effect on them. They're just making a decision, but it doesn't have any direct effect on them. And it has an effect on the Westmeads and the Carlows. That's kind of, unfortunately, Shane, that's always been the way at Congress. You know, decisions of this nature are being made, and like there's overseas bodies that have a big say in them as well that doesn't directly affect them. Like that's kind of always been the way. I feel anyway, whatever about the winners playing a game, the runners up in the Joe McDonagh playing a game, that has to go. Like if you're beaten in an All-Ireland final, that's the end of your season. Well, maybe for the winners, it's a nice reward, you might say. Maybe they should just be able to sail off into the sunset for that year and enjoy their success and not have to get back up after that. But then some will say that they mightn't have the same squad for next year and they deserve that crack. And that you're going to have a big team coming to town and it's a big day out and it's a big promotional tour or whatever. I'd probably at this stage, looking at the results outside of the Laois Dublin game in 2019, it probably hasn't really been a success. And I'd probably scrap both, I'd say. And I'd say when the McDonagh finishes, you've won your All-Ireland, you're promoted to Leinster or Munster for next year, and that's that. And we buy an extra 2 or 3 weeks back in the calendar.
Yeah, I just think as well the Joe McDonagh teams, the competition shouldn't be run off so quickly. and just played with one of the All-Ireland semi-finals. Can you imagine? So what was the final last year? Offaly against what was it?
Carlo.
Offaly against Carlo, sorry. And it was classic, and it went to extra time and all that kind of stuff. Can you imagine if that was played at a stadium, and let's say, for example, if it was on the same day as the Clare Kilkenny one? So now all of a sudden maybe you'd have close to double the attendance, because I'm sure a lot of Offaly and Carlo supporters, extra people would come because they're like, just we'll also be able to see Kilkenny against Clare. That'll be a right whole match as well. So you might double the crowd. It's a bigger occasion. And I just think it just makes more sense rather than forcing these teams to play like, at times like 5 games in 6 weeks and whatever. And it's just very difficult for the body. And speaking of things difficult for the body, Jake Morris was talking to the Examiner this week, previewing and promoting the Dylan Quirk Foundation. And he was talking about the head-high tackles. Now, he's in a race against time to be available for Nina's preliminary quarterfinal in Tipperary against Thurles. I mean, what a mouthwatering game. Like, Thurles were brilliant against Borrisoleigh last week, but Nina have kind of had their edge in recent years, and Jake scored a hat-trick against them a few years ago. Remember this? They beat them 3-12 to 1-7 or something like that. But actually, Nina did all their scoring very early on. But it's the second time that Morris has got a bad facial injury, as he said. He said, I broke my jaw in 2018 playing college. This was UL. Similar enough incident as well. I like to carry the ball into contact, so it probably doesn't help. But something probably has to be done to prevent serious facial injuries. We all have to get up to work on a Monday morning. And like the hit that he took from James Quigley, Quigley got red card, and rightly so. I think it is a bit high or whatever. But players do run at each other at serious pace, and there's a lot of whole thing about breaking the tackle. So you're kind of running forcefully towards a player. Now, you mightn't necessarily be looking to barge the player, but you are looking to make contact with them going past. So there's a risk reward with that too. So you can't necessarily just put it all on the tackler, because what are you supposed to do? Like, imagine if you just got out of the way and said, send man and ball through, or woman and ball through in the case of Camogie. It works both ways here. So, where do you draw the boundary here? Because in hurling, there are no rules. There are interpretations of rules, and it's the same in Gaelic football as well. You're relatively lawless. So, I don't know. It's not just down to the tackler.
No, it's a tricky one. There is a duty of care on the tackler that you're not, going peeling a fella. But like when a lad do try to run through you a lot of the time as well. So it does get pretty tricky in that regard. He's kind of talking about being more serious about head-high tackles. Like I think it's creeping in something shocking in the last 12 months in particular. Like every game we're seeing like a really robust kind of challenge to the head. And I think we're on a really, really thin line as regards, look at what they're doing in rugby now and the furore about any of those type of hits. Like you're still kind of getting away with them in hurling at the moment. And I don't know if that's something that's going to go on in the off season, and there's going to be a bit of an edict passed down that we're going to have to cut down on this. That doesn't mean I want to get rid of the physicality in hurling, but like there's physicality, and I just think it's mad, some of the stuff that's going on, particularly in underage games. And I'll go back to Offaly and Cork in the under-20 final. I'll go back to Kilkenny and Galway was it the Leinster minor final as well. Like there was some ridiculous head-high challenges in those games. And if they're not punished, lads will continue to do them. And that's not sour grapes on the under-20 part. I'm just picking out that was one of the worst ones I saw. And I think we're going to have to deal with them be an awful lot harsher in how we deal with them, because we're on a thin line there between, look at the amount of rugby players that are suffering like really serious injuries, and down the line lads that are 45 or whatever. And as Jake says here, we all have to go up to work on a Monday morning, and it's no fun getting up to work on a Monday morning with a broken jaw.
No, certainly not. You wanted to talk about Vera Pauw.
Yeah, no, I tell you what, like I'd have a passing glance interest in the soccer, but obviously when they got to the World Cup, it was a really, really big deal. And she was heralded as, the great manager that helped us get to our first Women's World Cup or whatever. And I just think it's kind of mad how the wheel turned. Maybe it was just before the championship with regards to their style of play. A style of play, might add, that got them to where they were. Maybe something similar to Jackie's Army back in the day. But all of a sudden, the player wheel kind of turned and things started going against her. And like the main reason she's gone, let's call a spade, is because there seems to be a player revolt against her. Now, within the GA, we're pretty accustomed to a good old-fashioned player revolt. And I'm just even thinking from yourself and from a viewer's point of view, like, is there anyone in particular that stands out? I'd always think back to the Anthony Cunningham one in Galway. With that and the Babs as well, yeah, and the Pat Holmes and Noel Kennedy one in Mayo as well. But it's just almost all of a sudden the player wheel starts turning. They're not happy with what's going on, and there's a massive change. And I thought it was mad with Vera Pauw how the players were almost publicly not backing her. That you wouldn't really have that in the GA. But any other kind of good examples?
Well, so just to take up that point though, I wonder if there's sort of leaders in the dressing room and they're like, okay, we know ultimately this player, and look, I don't know what Katie McCabe's preference is with this, but there was obviously that high profile incident where she was more or less saying, will you take this player off because the energy, the player doesn't have the energy anymore.
And then it was shown that player in question had covered more ground during that game than Katie McCabe, but that's another point altogether. And
then of course there was like the zip face emoji that Katie put out afterwards. So she's going to be on that team for the next, I'm not sure exactly what age she is, but we'll say the next 10 years. And those players all know that this is our best player. So is there a case of like, okay, ultimately that manager might be there for another year or two, but as players, we might as well stick together, move on to the next manager, probably be a pretty good appointment, you'd be hoping. So that might be the easiest way to move on, rather than having disharmony with our best player for the next few years. That could also be happening. I'm sure that happens in dressing rooms. Like sometimes the main players lead what's going to happen down the line. Maybe that was the case with Anthony Cunningham. One or two players had their nose out of joint and they led the revolt. The other players were like, it's easier to go with this rather than having, the big names unhappy with, the management.
Yeah, Pádraig Ryan just says, don't forget the McCarthy saga with the Cork hurling team. That revolt dominated the media galore.
Probably affects him to this day.
Yeah, then you also have the Justin McCarthy one in Limerick as well. And you probably have Justin McCarthy in Waterford as well, who obviously departed mid-season. It's mad when you go through it, and they're not even the best ones. Like, a lot of the best ones are at club level where anything could have happened, or one person could have made the decision, be it a chairman, be it a captain, be it the club star or whatever. Tipperary probably have a few. Michael Ryan back in the day. You would have Colin Bonner probably as well. Realistically, maybe the wheels were probably moving in the background there as well. I just thought it was interesting because as an organisation, we've probably had more examples of player power getting rid of managers, probably I'd say, than any other organisation.
Yeah. I'm sure we noticed this week that Borris Kilcotton, they got relegated down to Premier Intermediate for next year. They were champions down in it's only 2016. I remember we met them in the Leinster Hurling Championship. That was the day that Con O'Callaghan announced his arrival as a senior club hurler. Ken Hogan was over the team that time. They're after getting relegated. The Harps beat them. I think it was after extra time and all.
No, I think it was normal time. Was it
normal time?
Yeah.
Yeah, so James Duggan, who I had with the UCD Freshers, I noticed his name bouncing up once or twice during the tweets as well, that he was doing a bit of scoring. So that's a sickening one for Borris Kilcotton, because they'd amalgamated from Borris and Austria, and they'd amalgamated, they'd done very well, they'd won their county title. To then take that step backwards, that's a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah, county champions in 16 and runners up in 19, 20 and 21. So in a county final as recently as 2021, they probably would have felt very aggrieved at not getting another county title. I'm just thinking of names, Brian Stapleton, Matthew Whelan. They're probably both kind of moving on, or Matthew I think is still playing. Aaron Dunphy as well would be another one. Neil Foyle, and I know I saw his name on the score sheet last night. That's going to be a hard one to take for them. I think it's the third time in a row that the Harps kind of saved their best to last, or saved their bacon at the relegation final stage, even though I think it's always ridiculous to call it a relegation final. PJ Scully obviously be playing with Borris Kilcotton as well. So they have lots of names that you'd know, and for them to be playing second grade of Laois hurling is, you'd have to say, it's a massive shock. And I'm just even thinking, what other kind of quick downfall of champions? You mentioned Kilrowan, which is a really quick downfall as well, going from winning the county title last year, the first one since the year they won the Club All Ireland, I think, or that term, and now they're in relegation trouble. And I'm sure there are lots of other ones in counties where a golden crop comes through, they get to a certain age, they're maybe just a bit over the top. The next crop coming through isn't quite as good. They fall away. And once you fall away one grade, the worry is that you fall away another grade. Do you know what I mean? Muckalee in Kilkenny would be another one. They were in a county final in, I'm going to say maybe 08, and are down the tiers. I think Cheddar's doing good work with them now, and they seem to have won their first couple of games. But once you fall down a grade, it can be very, very difficult, and that kind of apathy can set in. It can be very difficult to get back to the heights that you once were in.
Yeah, I remember playing Muckalee a few times. They're like the mountain men in Kilkenny. They're strong physical men to come up against. And actually, as you mentioned, Killerwan McDonough's there. And like this could be the case with a lot of clubs. They had players away, obviously players injured and stuff like that. How many teams had player like across the country, because of the clubs starting up in July in a lot of cases, had players that are away with J1s, whereas if they were in another county, they'd have been back in time to play in the county championship. Like, it's only hotting up in Kilkenny now, whereas other championships are done. We know that the Wexford Championship for one is done. But Killerwan now, maybe if it had only to start up now, and this isn't, to necessarily argue for one way or the other in terms of where the calendar should start, but Killerwan probably should be getting to a position now where they're getting stronger. But they're in relegation now with JK Brackens, Upperchurch, and Clonolty Rossmore, unless Clonolty go on to win the county title, and then they'll be exempt from it, and then you'll have 3 teams in the relegation. But like, JK Brackens are coming to a boil now nicely with the likes of Paddy Cadell back, Connor Cadell, who was away in America as well, another one. They're starting to come to the boil nicely. Upperchurch were, very impressive last year at times as well. So you could potentially see the county champions get relegated. Yeah,
well, when you say it there, it's just like as well, like Kilkenny's only heating up now, and it is. So you could have been away for the whole summer, and you come back, and timing is fine. Like, do you know what I mean? So you're not missing that. Whereas in other championships, you say, like, if you were away for the summer in Laois, you basically missed everything. So it's a very, very tricky one. But when you fall, you can fall quite hard, and I think the one thing I'd imagine Boris Kilcotton have too much class to make sure that they stay falling. You'd like to think so anyway.
The Waterford semi-finals are on this weekend. Ballygunner are going to meet 4 Mile Water. Nobody's going to give 4 Mile Water a chance there, and probably rightly so. The way I saw Ballygunner play last week against Dungarvan, they just pop the ball around, and it's like they just keep pulling strings until the other team unravels. And that was the case for Dungarvan at times. And it still felt like they had another gear if Dungarvan ever responded. Now, maybe Dungarvan would see it a little bit differently, but that's just how it felt watching it. Ballygunner beat them by 12 points last year. And look, I don't know. It's just very hard to make a case for anyone other than Ballygunner. Looking for their, 54th, 55th win in a row? Looking for 2 in a row of championships?
Going for 54 in a row. Haven't been beaten since that 2013 county final. 4 Mile Water obviously gave them lots of it 2 years ago. Was it in a quarter final? I think Desi Hutchinson popped up with 2 points near the end of the game to kind of save Ballygunner, but they look like they're in a completely different position this time around. And 4 Mile Water really struggled to beat Abbeyside at the weekend, despite having a numerical advantage. So, like, all signs point to Ballygunner there. You'd have to say, maybe even pretend. I'm just even thinking down the line, and maybe I'm disrespecting 4 Mile Water here, but they could be somewhat undercooked potentially going into a county final. And maybe if you're going to catch them, that's when you catch them. But traditionally, over the last few years, Ballygunner have often saved their best. It's almost like they wait for the TG4 cameras to come, and they produce their best in a county final. And I know it was a bit of a quagmire when they played Mount Sion there last year in the final. It was a woeful day, but years before that, they gave Roemore a fair hiding in 2021. They dished out a big hiding to Passage in 2020, I think, as well. But yeah, no, very, very impossible to see past Ballygunner here, realistically. A couple of interesting questions within Ballygunner. Patrick Fitzgerald limped off, I think, at the end of the quarter final. Will he start? He was taking the freeze over Pádraig Mahoney. Mahoney's not a bad exactly plan B free taker to have. Who will hit them? Will Fitzgerald be fit to start? Will they risk him? It's obviously week on week as well, so things get a bit tricky. If someone picks up a knock, you only have a week to recover. But yeah, no, Ballygunner roaring hot favourites there, and justifiably so.
some comments here about the redrawing of the county boundaries when it comes to voting here. Joe Butler, guys, what do you think about Tullaroan being associated with Tipperary for voting purposes in a redraft of the constituencies? Something will have heart failure. And PUL74 says, what about Urlingford and parts of Tullaroan entering the North Tip electoral constitution? Real men in Tip now, he says. Look at it, trying to sort of get me going. Look at, if they want to get their day passes so they can come into Tipperary and be close to the Golden Veil, we're absolutely welcoming them in there.
Eddie Brennan was saying when he drives from Ballycallan to my Carkey, he said he's going through Urlingford like this. He's like with hand up like that, making sure no one sees him crossing the border. Actually, it's mad. It's mad what changes were. It used to be an Offaly constituency, and then we were thrown in with our good friends in Laois and that. It's mad the way it works. Like, I know Tommy is like put out about people even saying that his house potentially is in the Greg Ballycallan, or their home house is in the Greg Ballycallan parish. So I don't know what he's going to think about voting in Tipperary now.
De La Salle against Roemore in the other semi-final, and this one is tough to call, and it's going to be the reopening, I suppose, of Walsh Park now that it's been refurbished, and there's more work to come there. But a lot of the talk is the free takers, Ruben Halloran. On the other side, Gavin O'Brien. He didn't miss any at all, I think, the last day. De La Salle still have Kevin Moore and Lord up front, and he has Tonto Douglas up there with him as well. So two big men. Jake Dillon, centre back. Jack Fagan, he's at midfield, but pushes up for puckouts. Obviously, big physical man as well. Billy Nolan looked impressive as a sweeper the last day against Roemore as well. So, like, really hard to call this game. And it's probably, is it unfair to say this could be the last interesting game of the Waterford Hurling Championship?
Oh, yeah, well, it's probably harsh maybe, but it's probably somewhat fair too, to be honest with you. This is very, very difficult to call. We obviously did a showdown in Roemore earlier on this year, and getting back to a county final after a difficult day in 2021 would have been one of our goals for the year. This is a 50-50 game. I probably just about fancy De La Salle, because I know from chatting a few down there, I think Donald O'Rourke is involved with them, who's a coach with he's coach with Pat Ryan in Cork. Very, very, very well regarded, former Waterford Camogie manager. And I just think when you go through maybe the star power that they have, albeit Kevin Moore and a bit older, Tommy Douglas is a good player and would have been teetering around county squads maybe for the last decade. Jake Dillon, who obviously finished up with Waterford a couple of years ago. Jack Fagan's probably the difference maker for me, I'd say. If Roemore are able to stop him, and particularly going forward, because he's so dangerous going forward when he gets that head of steam up. But no, I just think De La Salle might squeak this. So I think it'd be De La Salle, Ballygunner in the final. Yeah,
and Lismore against Dunhill in the Waterford relegation final. Could be like Dan Shannon still going strong. We talked about him at 46. He's still probably going to be in this game as well. The Premier Intermediate hurling semi-finals are on. Ferrybank against Shamrocks and Ballygunner against Cappoquin. It's at this point we're going to bring in Darragh Flynn, who regularly works with us, to do the weekly quiz. So we're going to be pitted against each other. Rather than Verney asking me and the audience questions, Darragh is going to be our quiz master. And by the way this works is we're going to be asked 3 questions each. Darragh's going to ask us. If we get it right, 2 points. But let's say I can't answer it and Verney can. He'll get an extra bonus point as well. So Darragh, we'll let you take it away.
I love this. I don't know what direction this is going in, but I'm looking forward to it.
That's how we're getting on. I made the questions a bit tough after the rollicking you gave my former Waterford there.
Are these going to be all Waterford club hurling questions again?
Well, one is, and then one turned. I was looking up amongst the club thing, and it turned out it is a Waterford thing. So by pure fluke, we've 2. So I've Verney to go first. So it works out better that way because they've been giving out about the questions. So Verney, you can go first. What club has won the most county senior football titles across the All of Ireland in the 2010s?
2010 to 2019, is it?
Yeah, that decade, yeah.
In club or county?
Club.
So what club has won the most senior county titles? It could be any of the 32 counties, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have to think of who's been the most dominant team in that period.
I feel like you're giving him clues there, so don't give him any clues.
I'll give you clues as well. Don't worry. I'll give you clues as well.
2010 to 2019. I'm going to go with Crossmaglen.
Incorrect. It was there's.
No, hold on.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
Shane,
yeah.
yeah. I forgot. Go on.
Okay. Right. So
I'm really glad that I didn't say something else that I was thinking there and give you a possible answer, so I won't do that.
yeah, so I can kind of throw out a few answers I'm thinking. And by the way, people jump in with your comments there. That might help me. I'll see them before.
No.
Yeah, don't be
Okay,
cheating.
so the teams I'm thinking are, I'm thinking of the likes of Scottstown. I'm thinking of the likes of, who else was on my mind? No, there's too many teams that win it in Dublin. There's got to be, I was also thinking.
Shano, you have to give your answer without looking at the screen. Seriously now.
I'm not, okay. All right, I saw the answer. I saw Corofin written there. So I'm going to hold my hands up and just say, okay, I don't know.
But that's not the answer anyway. Port
Is it-
Leash.
Port Leash.
Really?
Oh,
No,
yeah,
I
you're
know.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus, yeah, it's gas. Eating bread is quickly forgotten, like, because they haven't won the last couple of years. You totally forget about them.
That was a good
And it
question.
was-
That was a rough
That's
question, but it was a good one.
Jay Stats had to credit him there. I saw it there at the Think of Questions. So
Okay,
Shane,
I'm going to change it now so I can't see the answers coming up. Verney, can you do it as well so you don't see the comments?
I can't see them now. No.
Okay, grand. I
So-
can't see them now.
go on. So Shane, your question now is: what club has lost the most Munster club senior hurling finals?
The most Munster Senior Club finals.
So, that's Dara Munster Senior Club hurling finals.
Yes, Wikipedia gave me this answer now, so we can blame
Okay.
them.
Okay. Well, who would be getting to them regularly? I think tip teams would be too spread out over the years. Too many different winners.
Too windy.
Yeah, wow, you went there. Waterford teams would. No, Ballygunner have started winning them. They've only Ballygunner.
Correct. 9.
Oh,
Yeah.
great show. Fairness to you.
That was I'll give you credit.
If Boris Lee hadn't have beat them, you wouldn't have said them. No way.
Look, I'm happy. I'm happy with that. 2 points on the board.
Right, so Verney, I'll give you your question now. So, how many non-repeat different winners does the Tipperary Senior Hurling Championship currently have?
Huh?
Repeat that question in English.
So, how many non-repeat? So, it's for the different years have the Tipperary Senior Hurling Championship have? So, they've had different winners. How many years?
Different winners. Okay.
So how many different years in a row has a new team won Tipperary?
Yeah.
Okay.
2022 is Kilruan. 2021 is who won it in 2021 again? Kildangan won it in 2020. Clonty won it in 18. The last 6 winners.
Correct.
Go on, you boy.
Yeah, Thurles had won a few in a row,
Yeah.
and then since then, yeah.
So,
So it is actually 7. It is 7 winners in 7 different winners in a row, but for non-repeats, like you said, Darry, it's six.
Yeah. So it's third has won 4 in a row up to 14, 17. Then it's third is Clonty, Bars, Kildangan, Lockmore, and Killawan McDonough's.
Yeah, and it won't be Kilruan this year, so that means that it's going to be 7 in a row, and it could actually be 8 in a row if it's not Thurles, or 8 different teams. If you're looking at it that way. Right. So Verney's, it's 2 each now.
2 on the board.
Captain, you hear now, Shane, but this is the same question, but it's for Tyrone in the football championship.
Christ. I know that no team has done it 2 in a row since 2005. So I'm going to go... Right. So the question then, no repeat winners. So it's
no repeat winners.
Like if a team won it in 2007 and also won it in 2012, that still keeps the run that you're talking about going, isn't it? Okay, so 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 16 years.
17.
Oh!
Incorrect. That's you're close, but no
Oh,
cigar.
you didn't give Verney a chance to answer.
Nah, it's okay. No, Shane. I give it
I
that.
forgot.
This is basically like snooker, foul and a miss, where you're in an impossible snooker and you've gotten so close. Like you nearly deserve the points, but you don't get them.
Right, so I have
Carrick
two more
Moore who
questions.
Wasn't it Carrick Moore who last retained it? So it must have been
Yeah.
0405 rather than 0506. Oh,
Yeah.
well.
There's good effort. Fairness to it.
Right, so I have one more question each for you. So my Waterford question is: when did De La Salle last win the Waterford Senior Hurling Championship?
That's for
Waterford heavy
me.
questions.
That's
Yeah.
for me, Darry. Yeah.
Hurling, yeah.
Oh God. I'm just going to come out with it rather than trying to debate what year. 2011.
Shane,
2010.
both wrong. 2012.
Oh
Was it
God.
12? I was thinking the time that they played Clarenbridge in the All-Ireland semi-final.
No, that was 09 into the
They
10.
won.
That was the 10 All-Ireland, wasn't it?
I thought that
No,
was
I
11
have it
and
here now. So fucking they won in 2008, 10, and 12.
That's disappointing.
Yeah.
Okay. So it gives me a chance to win
So
or
to
take
nick
on.
it there, Shane.
It also gives me a chance.
If I don't get it right, yeah, okay. Right, this has been a good quiz.
Right, so this one now, I couldn't believe this stat. I got off GA stats, so I don't think now many people will get this. So what is the gap between the first and second team in the Armagh Senior Football Roll of Honour list? It's the biggest in the county of any senior football teams. So you have the top team has
Cross
how
McGlen.
many? Yeah, and then who's second? And then what's the gap between them?
Okay, so I would guess that they have about... No, I might as well not give any information when I'm guessing here. So who do I think is top? Cross McGlen. Who do I think is second? I have no idea. No idea. I'm going to say there's 34 titles between number 1 and 2.
Verney, do you want to give a guess? Because
That's wrong
Shane's
anyway.
incorrect.
I'm going to say that Cross McGlen are on about anything between 36 and 40. And I'm going to say, I could be wrong. I'm going to say 22 is a number in my head.
Verney's closest, 25.
Which was never part of the deal.
Go on.
No.
How many have Cross McGlen got and who's next best?
Oh, geez, I didn't even have that. I only have that 25. Checking your man on Twitter didn't have it, so I kind of
25.
Yeah.
25. Jesus, that is some amount. Like,
And I
imagine,
kept your tied, so I have actually a tiebreaker, to be fair.
Oh, lovely. Is this
Hold on,
a buzzer?
I'm looking up who has the most. Okay, so Cross McGlen have 46, Armagh Harps have 21.
Jenny Mac.
So, no, what we'll do is you can both give a guess. And I have it in points, not goals and points. So I have it, this is on GA stats. Who is the top scorer from play in an All-Ireland Senior Football final?
Of all time.
So, of all time.
Hold on a second now. Who is the top scorer from play? So we have to come up with the person.
Yeah. You can have I can give you the person now, and you can guess how much he scored. So it's just points, total of points he scored.
So you're converting goals to points.
Yeah. So
And this is over. Is this overall his All-Ireland final appearances?
Yes.
Okay.
So Colin Cooper is the top scorer in All-Ireland finals from play. But how much did he score from play? In points now. The closest.
Okay.
Shano, you go first.
I won't. I won't. God almighty. You should really give us a time limit here because we're both just going to be guessing anyway.
I'll give you one guess, and I'll give you about 30 more seconds to be a bit more kind.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to guess 32. 32, it converts to 32 points.
Yeah.
I'm going to get... I'm not going to go higher, just one higher or one lower, Shano, because that's not right. I'm going to go with 26.
Well, sorry to hear, Verney, but Shane was closest but incorrect, with 31 points is the correct answer.
Which is not bad in fairness.
You'll have to give it to me.
Yeah, I'll give it to you there. You're winner on default.
Okay, yeah. Actually, a couple of people, the likes of Fergus Butler here, had Cross on 46, Armagh 21, Armagh Harps 21.
He Googled it. He had to have had.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, Dara, thank you very much. And as a 4 Mile Waterman, you're looking forward to a nice little pasting against Ballygunner, yes?
Oh, no, Jesus. You have to buy a ticket to win the lotto, sure. We'll give it a good go.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that quiz. It was excellent. We'll have you back doing it again next week.
We'll see you again next week for a county
Cheers,
final.
Dara. Good man.
Right, the Limerick Championship is on this weekend. And I suppose looking at some of the games here, Ahan against Patrickswell, both sides will be looking to get back to winning ways after losing the last day out. Like Patrickswell, it was probably a bit of a surprise losing by 2 points to Doon the last time out, but they'll look for a bit of a response here. Ahan, they pushed Kilmallock hard in their last out, and they'll be hoping to obviously address some of the issues there. Kildimo, Pallaskenry, they're up against Kilmallock. Kilmallock are the only team with 2 wins from 2, whereas Kildimo, they've lost both of their games in their first year at the top table, lose to Ahan and the Piershig. Then Doon are also against the Piershig as well. They're on 2 points each after the Piershig bet Kildimo and Patrickswell lost to Doon. So then in the other group, which Group 2, Round 3, there are 3 teams unbeaten heading into this round: Mungret, St. Paul's, Ballybrown and Adair. And I'll just let you run through the fixtures there if you want.
Yeah, so they're facing off against Mungret, St. Paul's. Both teams drew their last games, and this should be tight enough again. Don't know whether Declan Hannon hasn't been back yet. Whether he's going to be back for this or not, I'm not sure. I know he was on a stag there recently in Dingle, but I don't know whether he's going to be back fit to play this. Gary Spillane against Monaleen. So Monaleen had a fairly comprehensive enough defeat to Mungret in the first round, and then they bounced back well the last day, beating South Liberties. And then it's Ballybrown against South Liberties. And on known form, you'd probably have to say Ballybrown are fairly strong favourites going into that one.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, then the next thing we were going to talk about was the end of year Leinster report card. Or should we leave that till Monday?
I think we leave that till Monday. Focus maybe a bit more on the club. We could do that on Monday. We'll have to be fairly harsh on our grades on Monday as well. We'll have to be consistent.
Yeah, no better men to do it. In Cork this weekend, so Group A, Blackrock will face Middleton. Conor Lahan's a major doubt. He came off against Glen Rovers, and Sam Quirk broke his arm in training, so that's not ideal.
Mad to see the Glen are gone, Shane, already as well, isn't it? Like Cork Championship, not even. It's heating up obviously, and the Glen are out of the running, which is a disaster for them.
Yeah, and in this group now, Blackrock and Middleton, they're already through, but this is just basically talking about securing the number 1 seeding and seeing who goes straight through to the semi-finals. If it's a draw, actually, Blackrock, they'll claim top spot in the group because of their score difference. Glen Rovers are against Bishopstown. Group B, then Douglas are against Charleville. So also Erin's Own against Father O'Neill's as well. Group C, Newtown Shandrum against Sarsfields, and St. Finbarrs against Kanturk. Is there anything you want to pick out from that?
No, I think the permutations are kind of tricky enough, are they? There's a lot of different kind of things going into the weekend about who can go through.
Well, the Bars need a win anyway to keep their back-to-back bid alive.
Yeah,
a draw is only good enough if Newtown Shandrum don't take maximum points off Sarsfields.
And just on a previous point that we made, they had a heap of boys over in the States that will just have been back in the last couple of weeks. So I'd imagine their hand will be strengthened every week. And I'd imagine they'll have nearly everyone on board for that game this weekend, just when they need them. And again, if they're able to get over that, and get through Kanturk, which they'd be favoured to do, to be fair, they could go on a big run again and they're going to be hard stopped. But it's just a matter of getting over that game first.
Yeah. The Galway Championship is on again this weekend. Tommy Larkins are against Clarenbridge, Ormore Marie against Clymer Daly. St. Thomas's will meet Turlock Moor. So Thomas is looking to go for a 6 in a row. Is it Turlock did it a 5 in a row, or did they actually do a 6 in a row back in the 80s?
Maybe back in the day. Could be even further back again. It could be the 60s. I can't remember. But Thomas's are obviously going to be without Davy Burke. I think he has hopes of getting back to it for a semi-final, but even that is probably limited enough kind of chance, I'd say, at this stage. He did the Cruciate earlier on in the year, and then was doing a bit of punditry with GA Go, but he's obviously going to be a massive loss for them. Just flying through a couple of the games there, Portumna and Gort, and then in Group 3 you have Kilkenny against Loughrea. Loughrea seem to be the form team from anything I've seen at the moment, and if Thomas are without Davy Burke for the knockout stages, like, it's just someone needs to step up. They looked like last year they were nearly going to step up, and they were very close to obviously brought them to a draw in a county final. So they'll probably be seen as the biggest contenders. Mike Cullen then against Capatagal, Castlegar against Craughwell, Sarsfields against Ardrahan, and then Kilkenny's kind of heating up again this weekend as well too. Round 4 in Kilkenny. Yeah,
so if you look at Group A, Glenmore against Greg Ballycallan, James Stevens, the Villager against Erin's Own, and Shamrocks and Ballyhale against Bennettsbridge. So just the kind of tail of the tape at the moment. Glenmore are top with 3 wins from 3, so they're flying it. James Stevens, Bennettsbridge, and Ballyhale Shamrocks, they've all got a win, loss, and a draw each. Then Greg Ballycallan, they have 1 win and 2 losses. And then Aaron's owner propping up the rest with 2 losses and 1 defeat there. So Conor Fogarty looks like he might make his comeback this weekend, or is there talk of it anyway?
Yeah, I think he's due to be back this weekend. He broke a rib, as I said in Monday's show, Monday's show. He broke a rib I think midway through the first half and came off at half time. So he should be back. They've really been struggling without him. They've only got a point picked up so far, which obviously will affect the draw that they'll get in those preliminary quarterfinals / relegation games. And Brian Cody's obviously on the line for James Stephens as well. As manager, he didn't wait too long. He was obviously in as selector last year, and he's straight in as manager, so he's not taking any time out. Just on one of the comments there as well, ML89 says Ardratton v Sarsfields in Galway. That's on TG4 on Sunday. Ardratton have one of the biggest set of forward lines I've ever seen in a club team. Majority of lads are 6'1" or more, and Johnny Glynn is actually back hurling with them at the moment.
I've played against them twice over the years. They're enormous.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're feeding them. I remember when I was young lad thinking Borlahan, like, are they feeding them angel dust down here or what? And I think the same about Ardratton.
There's a few teams we've played in Galway. We played Mullia one time, and I just remember thinking, I think it was, is it the Dervins or Mullia? I think they're all big monsters of men. But like Johnny Glynn fitting back into a club forward line, I don't know. There's some talk, and there's obviously going to be when he switched club allegiance back that potentially he might come back for Galway or that. But he's based in the States, so I still say that's unlikely. He's 30 now as well. If he's going to do it, now is probably the time that he has to do it because time is running out. But he was obviously involved with that New York football team that had the big win over Leitrim earlier on this year. But great for them to obviously have him back. And then just switching to Kilkenny and the other group in Kilkenny. So Dixborough are flying. They're 3 from 3 at the moment. O'Loughlin's are 2 from 3 along with Tullerone. You've Clara with 1 win from 3. Mundavat the same. And Danesfort are at the bottom of the table with no wins. And they've their scoring aggregate is -35. So they're in a bit of bother at the moment, having just won the intermediate last year. The games this weekend are O'Loughlin's against Clara. That'll be interesting because Brian Hogan is managing O'Loughlin's and his brother Keith is playing for Clara. So that'll be pretty interesting. Dixborough against Mulnavat. Mulnavat won the football championship earlier on the year. I think it was finished in May. And they'll be looking to go on a run in the Leinster Intermediate again. But Dixborough seem to be flying it. Tullerone are a team
Tipperary constituents.
Yeah, Tipperary constituents, Tullerone. They play Danesfort. You'd be expecting them to come out on top there. I think Kilkenny is a bit more open this year than it has been. And if there's a team to step up, I probably would have Tullerone as that team, to be honest with you. Likes Mossy Keoghan, Tommy Walsh, Pádraig Walsh, Shane Walsh. Tommy is probably still doing a bit, I'm sure. I think Ken Coogan is over them. But they'd be my kind of team. I think they were the team that ran Ballyhale closest last year as well. Outside of, I'd say, Ballygunner in the All-Ireland semi-final, I'd say no one pushed Ballyhale closer than Tullerone did in that county semi-final last year.
Yeah, and Oisín Langan, who does the GA commentary across the board really and does it for KCLR, he was telling me that Dixborough, after watching our show on Monday, and we were talking about who's been impressive, beyond Ballyhale that might be able to make a burst in an All-Ireland series, he was saying that Dixborough have been very impressive this year. Like even their score rate, they've scored when converted to points 84 in 3 games and conceded just 51. So conceding just 17 points per game, that's very impressive. But it's just always, can they take that next step? Because they always have talent coming, but it's just to frank the form.
Big time.
Yeah, Aidan McGrath there.
He just says Cork apparently not using the new Crow Park mandate system, so that could lead to chaos yet. So obviously the bridge are out in Clare as a result of the kind of new system. There was a big hoo-ha and Offaly football, Senior B football with Gracefield, who I believe are going to the DRA with it now. I'm not 100% sure why, but Cork, being Cork, are doing their own thing.
Just for people who aren't sure, this is where, like, previously, if the head-to-head doesn't decide who goes through, you just go to score differences. But the new mandate is that, let's say there's several teams that are on head-to-head, 3 teams on head-to-head. They actually just, if they're going to go to scoring difference, it's just between those 3 teams, and everyone else that they've played is discarded, which I think is a better way to do it.
I'd be the same, yeah, because I think it rewards. I think it rewards consistency, being honest with you. Yeah, so I definitely do think it is better.
Do you want to hear another good one now? Yesterday, when I was doing Tipcast with Danina Guardian and Shane Brophy, came up with a great call, which is that in Tipperary, if you win your divisional championship, it gives you sort of a backup card to get into a preliminary quarter-final if you don't get through your county group. So there's 4 groups of 4, so the top 2 get through in each. But if you've won your division before that, it gives you a backup, a way back in the back door. But being honest, the north and the mid are bear pits compared with the south and the west. So the south and the west, which is just basically Clonouty have a backup to get in every year. And in the south as well, it's not like there's a huge amount of teams in there that are going to be vying to win the county title. So Shane made the point that if you finish bottom in your 4-team group, you shouldn't be allowed to use that. It should only be if you come in 3rd place that you then have the backup of being able to use that. Because it forces you to make sure, okay, this team is up to at least a certain standard.
Yeah, you could actually, you're thinking about it, like you could actually kind of throw your games and make no effort until the preliminary quarter-final if you wanted to, if that was your modus operandi. Like you have, it's like anything. You want that jeopardy. It's like anything in life. There has to be that bit of pressure, doesn't there? Like really the pressure to perform, and the absence of a back door or a trap door or something like that definitely puts the pressure on. So I definitely don't think that's a bad idea.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to move on to the next championship?
Yeah, the Dublin Hurling Championship, which you're heavily involved in this weekend. Whitehall Columkill, sorry for saying it, they're 0 for 2 going into this weekend. And Luke and Sarsfields are 2-0 going into this weekend. I'm not really sure what to ask you, because you're just going to give me the managerial speak. But I would have said you were better the second day even than you were the first day against Coola. I presume you're hoping for further improvement this weekend.
Definitely. Do you know what's a gas one? Do you know who's involved with Luke and Sarsfields outside of Charlie Carter, who's managed them? And this isn't even manager speak. They are going very well. Like they've won 2 from 2, beat Coola and Crokes, who've won 7 of the last 8 county titles. But Phil Lanigan, one of our journalistic compatriots, he's involved in the backroom team. And
really? That's gas.
Yeah,
Jesus, that's gas.
Every game, sure.
Phil is going to come up and hit your shoulder now one of the days, I'd say.
Straight into the back. But this game's going to be out in O'Toole Park in Crumlin. Looking forward to it. I think I think this is a truism, irrespective of it being manager speak as well. As long as the team actually just does itself justice. So against Coola, there was periods where the team did itself justice. The second quarter, absolutely not. And the third quarter, absolutely not against Crokes. But in 3 quarters of the 2 games, I was very happy with what the boys did and let the result take care of itself there. If for 4 quarters the team performs really well, I'll be happy and I'll take whatever result comes. And I'm sure the rest of the lads are that way too. The Hogans marked each other out in the county final. That's true about Keith Hogan and Brian Hogan before as well. Michael has just dropped there as about to ask him about his own championship, the Offaly County Championship. So hopefully he'll come back on. I might just bring up a bit of news about Liam McHale and his comments. So Liam McHale has said that a clash of football philosophies lay behind his decision to leave the Mayo management team after just 1 season. And he was saying that there was 5 of us there and the 4 lads had a totally different philosophy how the team should play than what I did. I'll just bring you back in a second there.
I just said I'd leave you sweat there while you were talking about Whitehall.
Yeah, that was pretty sound, yeah. I was just going on about Liam McHale's comments because they're going to bring it back to Offaly after that. But he says, I'm surprised at Kevin because normally we'd be in sync. I just felt there's no point in me being in there when I'm so far removed from their thinking. I didn't want to drag anybody down and I didn't want to upset the flow of the whole thing. I thought it was the right thing to do. Like if you're in, and we'll come back to Dublin as well if you want to talk about that, but like if you're in the room with other people and they're just thinking differently and you just kind of feel like, I don't know, you're totally removed from whatever they're obviously, if the majority is going to rule, which it generally will, and the manager will have the final say, and you're kind of thinking completely differently to the rest of them, and every decision that you want is kind of contravening what they want to do, and you're being outvoted all the time, whether it's done in a nice way or there's a kind of a harmonious departure, you do want to be out of that room. If you just feel like anything you have to offer isn't really on the table.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I've definitely been in that position in different walks of life, be it GA or otherwise, where you just people that you find it maybe you find it difficult to work with them because you just don't agree with their philosophies or whatever. And as part of a management team, we kind of flagged this up when the managerial race was going on in Mayo, that the amount of big names, that's one thing, but like, let's call a spade a spade. There's obviously going to be some egos involved here. Like it's only natural. Like you have an ego, I have an ego. We all have. Yours is a bit more inflated than mine is. but like, and you're talking about big personalities here, like really big personalities. Liam McHale is a big personality, as is Kevin McStay, as is Stephen Rochard, as is Donny Buckley, years of experience. So they're all not going to agree on different things. The only thing here is that Liam obviously did an interview, and I think it was for local radio in Ballina, and the question is going to be asked, and he just gave an honest answer, to be fair to him. And
That's the way he is.
Yeah, he didn't. He said he wasn't going to hang around, and he also said he was a bit surprised that Kevin, who's his brother-in-law as well, and they would have been together in Bridget's when they won the All-Ireland. They were together in Roscommon when they went on a good run as well. But maybe his head has been turned another way with other people's views on coaching or whatever. And it's a tricky one. But then there's talks now. Liam McHale been linked with the Clare job. Mick Bowen has also been linked, given his familial links there and the fact that he was coach under Colin Collins as well. But it is a difficult one. I'm sure you've had this even in workplaces as well, when your philosophies differ with others. And it's not really like you can't get away from them. If they're part of a management team, you're seeing them 3 or 4 times a week. You can't get away from them. So the only way to finish up is probably cut the cord. And I wouldn't expect Liam to be replaced either, because geez, they've a wealth of coaching nous and experience there. It's just people don't always agree on everything. They lock horns and things, and I'd say that was probably the case here. And he was, as you say, he was probably been outvoted on various decisions, and that's demoralising. You take that every now and then. It's like if me and you were picking an all-star team here every week, and I just went with every decision that you made. You know, I'd be like, all right,
yeah.
I'll see
Generally, I've had to capitulate for you.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah, which is unlike you, as I said, with your inflated ego. But
who has the bigger ego, me or Verney?
Stop, will you? No, I think we did something similar like this in a Twitter poll, and you were a resounding winner.
I romped home, did I?
Yeah.
Some of the other fixtures in Dublin then, Plunkett's are against St. Vincent's, so Pat Gilroy's at the helm there. Diarmuid Connolly's playing. Plunkett's had they've the likes of Keane Boland, and they're a common team. The other fixtures, Kilmacud are against Bridget's. That's in the same group that the Whitehall and Coola and Lucan are in as well. Crokes will be fancied there. I mean, Crokes are coming to the boil nicely. There was like that second half, when we were playing them with Whitehall, and just the first period or the first half of the second half, they were just on fire. Dara Purcell, and this is, they don't have Ronan Hayes at the moment, and there's 1 or 2 others to come back. And like, this is what I said before, like, teams don't have their full selection this early in the summer, or certainly, going up to a few weeks ago, teams are probably going to get stronger from here. But of course, some teams are going to be out. But like, Crokes are looking fairly irresistible. Like, it's going to be a big challenge for St. Bridget's. But, we've seen in recent years that they can rise it for them, and they do have plenty of quality. So that should be a good game all the same. I think that one's going to be on Dubs TV.
Quick one for you. Is Chris Crummy back with Lucan? Yes.
No, he hasn't been seen so far this year. So
Liam Rush, no. Nafina, no?
I actually haven't. I didn't catch that game that Nafina had a couple of, was it Friday a couple of weeks ago in the thunder and rain. They won very comprehensively. I'm not sure about Rush. I haven't seen Chris Crummy back. Who knows? Maybe he'll appear at this weekend at O'Toole Park. Wouldn't be sure. But
Keane Callahan back? No, Keane Callahan back with Coola? No. Okay.
No, and no David Tracy either.
Not a million. Like, it's not a million miles removed from when Dublin will be going back. Like, Dublin will be going back in a couple of months. Dublin senior hurlers. So you'd wonder whether a lot of these guys are going to be on board for 2024, because chances are, if they're not on board in November, December of this year, they won't be, you won't see them next year. So be interesting to see. Crummy, I would say in particular.
Yeah, he'd be a very big player. And Fogs are against Nafina this weekend as well. And Nafina were very good against, it was Plunkett's that they played there that Friday a couple of weeks ago. So I think Fogs will be kind of a bit concerned about making sure that Nafina don't get a run on them. And that is the thing when you're kind of coming up to Senior A, trying to get used to that level of competition, especially I'm not entirely sure. I think those 2 teams are playing up in Division 1 in the league. But if you haven't been exposed to these teams, the A teams in Division 1 league, it's then fair jump to just go up to Championship. It takes you a couple of games to get used to it. But loads of games going on there. Offaly this weekend. Tell us the tale of the tape there.
Yeah, not too many massive games with ramifications here because it's round 5 and most of the teams are through. Ballymere and Shinrone are both through, and Shinrone have been fairly decent since winning the county title last year. They've backed it up already, albeit just in group games. Ballymere have been one of the better teams, I'd say, so far this year as well. They've Dan Ravenhill is obviously eligible for adult hurling this year too. Rhinus against Kennedy. Rhinus were beaten by Kilcormac the last day. They'd be two of the favourites to win the championship. Kilcormac are probably marginal favourites. Kennedy are teetering with relegation. Burr playing Kilcormac this weekend. As I said, Kilcormac are going pretty well in Senior A and Senior B. And it would probably be favoured to win that game by a couple of points. The biggest game of the weekend is Belmont against Coolderry. Basically, this is kind of a winner takes all. Whoever wins is through to a quarter final. Whoever loses is out. So massive ramifications there. As regards who's kind of going best at the moment, you'd have to say Kilcormac are going best. They're pulling from a massive panel. Their Senior B team is even flying as well. Like, I think who are the main lads that have come up from the 20s this year? Adam Screeney's playing senior, Brecon Kavanagh's playing senior, Colin Spain, might be one or two more, but there's a nice few of them mingled in with the Senior Bs as well. They've serious strength and depth. No team in Offaly would have the colour of the strength and depth that Kilcormac have. It's probably a matter of time, I'd say. If they win one, they could win, several within a space of 8 to 10 years, I'd imagine.
And is Adam Screeney taking to senior like a duck to water?
Not. He's been good. I haven't seen him in the flesh, but he's been good from what I've been hearing. He's going to take a fair bit of marking. Even though he's fairly lightweight for senior level. And you can see from various games as well that he's able to take a bit of punishment too, and he's going to take it too. But he's done fine. He's done fine so far. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And ML89 just says, if Kilcormac win the title this year, could they go on a new period of domination? They've completely dominated underage. A good bit recent. Yeah, no, I'd fairly echo those sentiments too. Yeah, a lot of those guys coming up through underage haven't really lost games, and they've won Division 2 failures, and they've competed in All-Ireland minor finals, and competed in All-Ireland under-20 finals. I think it's only a matter of time.
Okay, in Antrim this weekend, O'Donovan Rossa against Clooney Gales. Dunloy will meet St. John's. Ballycastle meets Naveena, and a battle to see who comes top. Lochgiel against Cushendall. Also, the Monaghan hurling final is on this weekend. Castleblaney against Inniskeen. Castleblaney going for 7 in a row. Let's be honest, we're not too sure of the ins and outs of this match, but we'll make Castleblaney, I suppose, favourites, given that they're looking for 7
their history, and given they're going for 7 in a row, it'd make them fairly roaring half favourites. You'd have to say. Just moving to a bit of football. We obviously talked about Liam McHale's comments there. Some big games in Mayo this weekend. Gary Moore against Duneel. Balla against Briefy. Briefy were beaten last time out on the telly. Ballina Stephenites against Mayo Gales. Charlestown against Clare Morris. Balladreen against Westport. Westport are obviously defending champions. Ballintubber against Belmullet. And you have Castlebar Mitchells against Ahamore, and Ballyhonus against Knockmore. Just a quick one in Armagh, and we won't focus on it too much. Obviously, a big round of games there this weekend. It happened a few weeks ago when we were taking a little mini break. But Kieran McGeaney been back again. This is probably the opposite of player power. The players seem to be heavily backing him. Player power in a different type of a way, I suppose. Given that there's been no kind of trophies on the table, I wasn't surprised that he's back, but they have improved. It's just they've thrown in a few kind of clangers here and there. And there's obviously been an All-Ireland quarter-final last year on penalties, an Ulster final on penalties. They're close, aren't they? And I don't know if anybody else can bring them much further, but he's brought them to a fair point. It's just people seem to think he has a free pass nearly no matter where he goes. Yeah,
and Joe, funny enough, you mentioned the player power keeping him in. The players in Kildare, by all accounts, wanted to keep him in that time that he was voted out by the clubs. So he's obviously popular enough with the players. And I noticed when he was kind of involved as maybe a performance type coach with Tipperary or whatever, that he was kind of well liked by some of the players there also. I think it's getting to the stage now where we need something, as in if you're an Armagh supporter, you need a title on the board at this stage. A league title, an Ulster title, obviously an All-Ireland title would be the ultimate goal. But the talent that's there, you look at that forward power, Oisin O'Neill, Turbot, you can Nugent, you can name a lot of really good players there. They have most of what it takes to kind of get there and be winning these titles. Obviously, Derry are very good all of a sudden at this stage and have won back-to-back titles. And losing out on penalties, you can imagine the joyous scenes if they had to win that Ulster title. So when you get that close, I'm sure all the players feel we're right there. We're right there. So I can totally understand them keeping him for another year, but we do need something at this point.
Just on a point you made there, a fella from Borough has a great saying when you're talking about a team or people or even a horse. He just says, "Do they have the minerals?"
Yeah, you know that movie Snatch?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He says, you don't think of the minerals?
Yeah. It's a great way. It's either do they have the minerals or do they have the stuff? It's a great, because everybody knows what you're talking about realistically. The last one I wanted to touch on, Shane, just before we go, in the Donegal Championship. So one of their most favourite sons, Carl Lacey, is actually Kilcoo manager, which kind of flew under the radar. He obviously left that role as head of academy development in Donegal.
There was a nice bit of pucking going on in their match there the other night as well. I'm sure you saw the clip flying around.
There's always a bit of pucking going on in those games. But the one game I want to focus on Michael Murphy played well last weekend, obviously, and he's playing well in the Michael Murphy Sports and Leisure Senior Football Championship, which I always find quite amusing. They're playing Dunloe this weekend. Like, do you see Michael Murphy making a comeback for Donegal, and is it the right thing for him to make a comeback if he does?
I don't see him making the comeback. If anyone could, it would be Jim McGuinness. Now, and that's based on our understanding of how close their relationship would have been over those years with Donegal and probably beyond that too. If he goes back, I don't see him being a starter, if I'm honest. Now, he's not overly old. He's 34, but he's one of these players who got on the scene so early. Like a Wayne Rooney. He's a man at 16. And like Michael Owen, and maybe this is down to injuries or whatever, he was playing international football at 18. And a lot of these players that tend to be really fully formed and developed and competing with adults when they're very young, they tend to peter out just that little bit earlier. It's not always the case, but it just feels like it is often the case, especially someone who, is frame-wise a man when they're very young. And, that's where I bring Rooney back into the conversation alongside Michael Murphy, who at 17 was, he was huge for his age. So I think the last couple of years, Murphy has still had huge moments for Donegal, but there has definitely been times when he's been targeted by opposition and he's been under pressure. And he was brilliant on the analysis this year for GAA Go, the way he kind of pointed out how Derry went after Conor McManus and maybe even Jack McCarron at different stages and ran at them with their pacey players when they were in defensive positions. So I think Murphy would probably be under pressure in those situations. But if you could bring him off the bench, let's say for the last 15 minutes, maybe use him the way Conor McManus was being used in a couple of those games this year for Monaghan, I think it could be huge to have him in there. And obviously, he'd be good as a standard setter in the dressing room and all that. So I think, it'd be brilliant to get him back. Don't think he will come back. But used in that sort of role, I think he'd be great to have him.
I think it's very like the Joe Canning situation when Shefflin took over. Except Shefflin Canning had retired that summer. Murphy's been off a year. I don't think he'll be back as well. He'd be great to have. I don't know if he'd look at it that way, but I don't think he has, to be honest with you. I think in his head, I think he went out at the right time. And you know yourself how your body and mind is feeling. I think the game has changed probably a bit as well. And his body has taken a fair bit of punishment. Did you mention he was a man-child at 17? Like he was just physically dwarfing guys. I think McGuinness would love to have him back in any capacity, be it management or as an impact player. I probably don't see it. I just read an interview with McGuinness in the Times from last weekend as well. And he said he definitely put the question to him, but I just don't see him coming back.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, a bit like Shefflin last year, I think to tick the box and make sure that the zealots are happy, he's going to have to say that I will ask the person. He will have to ask the question because otherwise he'll have people turned against him straight away if he doesn't, irrespective of whether he should or shouldn't. But like if we had to say at the start of the year, what's in it for Conor McManus, who's 2 years older than Murphy? Should he stay on another year? And a lot of people outside of the camp might say, look, he's done enough at this stage. Monaghan won't win anything or whatever. And even though they didn't, it's really added to his sort of to his career at this stage, the fact that he stayed on and did what he did this year. Like, will Donegal win anything next year? We don't know, but they could be involved in some big days, and it'd be nice from Murphy's point of view to be involved. You never know; he could come out and pull something out of the bag, and you only know if you go there and try. So there surely some sort of a temptation, because you can't do what he did over the course of his career without being a competitive animal.
Yeah, no, it's true enough. Yeah, maybe he's re-energized after the year off. But I'd say, like, and you mentioned about being a pundit. I thoroughly enjoy him as a pundit, I have to say, because you can see how deeply he thinks about it. Maybe he thinks his career has gone in that kind of different direction now. But be fascinating couple of months. We'll probably only find out. Might only find out maybe in McKenna Cup. I'd say the first night of the McKenna Cup whether he was asked or what the crack is. If he does come back, it'd be a sensational comeback.
Yeah, absolutely would. That's it from the show this week, and this Thursday, I should say. We'll be back again, as always, on Monday, talking about all the club stuff and whatever's going on in the intercounty as well. By the way, if you want us to run a coaching clinic, get on to us at events@ourgame.ie. That's also where you can contact us if you want us to run a club GA fundraiser for you as well. That's no problem at all. And of course, the home of Our Game merchandise is ourstore.ie. Michael, we'll chat to you on Monday. Take her handy, and if you get her handy, take her twice.
Cheers, Shane. Take her handy.